News for all the people, the epic story of race and the American media.
Thanks. Atlanta has played a critical role in the historic fight for a just and integrated media system. Our nation's first African-American broadcast station was founded right here in Atlanta. One of the first major license challenges by African-American leaders against local broadcasters happened right here in Atlanta. Despite such pioneering efforts, people of color still remain too absent in the media. In Atlanta, there's not a single full-power commercial TV station owned by an African American. But Atlanta is not alone. African Americans own just 8 full-power TV stations nationwide. That is it. Less than 1% of all stations. And overall, people of color own just 3% of all full-power stations. TV stations and just 8% of all radio outlets. But despite this inequality, people of color have embraced broadcasting from the very get-go. Before big corporations understood the commercial potential of radio, following its creation, there was great hope that this new and wondrous technology would provide a voice to the many. African Americans formed amateur radio clubs across the country to teach each other how to broadcast, like the Woodland Radio Association in Chicago in 1915, the Banneker Radio Club in Baltimore in 1922. You see, people of color were not late to the game. Despite all the social, political, and economic obstacles they faced, they were not late to the game. But when Congress created the Federal Radio Commission in 1927 and gave the commission the power to allocate exclusive radio licensing for the first time, not a single person of color ended up with a station. Instead, corporate pressure resulted in the commission awarding our nation's most powerful stations to NBC and CBS. In other words, the government turned over control of the public airways to the rich and powerful, giving them a megaphone while silencing the voices of many. And we have learned through history the harm caused to our communities when we are unable to speak for ourselves. It will be another 20 years before the first African American was able to secure a broadcast license. In 1949, right here in Atlanta, Jesse Blanton put down $50,000 of his own money, his own fortune, to purchase a radio station that was losing money. He quickly turned WERD into one of the top stations in the market with programming that appealed to the black community. Atlanta was also home to one of the first efforts to pressure broadcasters to serve the public interest. In 1970, local black leaders challenged 28 broadcast licenses for their failure to serve the community, forcing broadcasters to improve his coverage and hiring. And from 1971 to 1973, there were more than 340 license challenges in this country, around the country, led mostly by black and Latino leaders. This new movement led to the first wave of journalists of color entering our nation's newsrooms, and the first government policies to increase female and minority ownership, and that was 1978. But over the past 2 decades, government policy has promoted greater media consolidation, making it more difficult for people of color to own broadcast stations and for policies to encourage greater diversity in ownership of rules have largely disappeared now. The commission has not come up with effective new policies to replace them, even though the courts have took the agency to task in 2004 and again this year for failing to address this issue. And it may get worse. According to press reports, the FCC is preparing to allow further consolidation, adopting largely the same rules the Bush FCC passed in 2007 that was rejected by congressional Democrats, including President Obama, who was the senator at the time. This is why a coalition of civil rights groups, journalists of color, and media justice groups have called on the commission to address the racial and gender inequality in our media system. Commissioner Cox, you have had a historic tenure at the FCC. It's really one for the record books. The fact this man has gone all across the country during his tenure to hear the voice of the people is something you don't see. We're asking you to suit up one last time for us. One last time, I need you to fight for what's coming, what we think is coming out pretty soon, allowing more newspapers to own broadcast stations in cities across the country. And Commissioner Clyburn, media justice groups and groups across the country, we adore you. We've adored you, we've had a good relationship with you. And the fact that you're there is a great testimony. The first African-American FCC commissioner ever in our history. It's an amazing. like to think that the struggle has been about having someone like you at that table at this time, when those decisions are being made, to make sure that the voices of the, who are silenced are heard. So you are counted on to be there. We need policies, and just in closing, we need policies to be able to tell our own stories. This is what it's all about. When other people tell our stories, we often get it wrong. So this is why I have to say no to more media consolidation because of the harm it caused to us. And, and thank you for having us here and having this conversation. So I look forward to the questions.